week or two. When that happens, all bills that aren't listed to carry over would fall and would then have to reintroduce all over again. And there are a number of bills where the House of Commons and the House of Lords are still disagreeing. The Nationality and Borders Bill is one of them. And as a member of Parliament, you get a sense of the disagreement on a bill by how many times the division bell goes and you're called to a vote. And on, I think it was Wednesday, it might have been Tuesday of this week. No, I think it was Wednesday. There were two bills that were still waiting to get through by the end of this session that went through session. The first one had 3 divisions on it, which was quite a lot. This bill had 12 separate divisions called. So that tells me that this bill is still extremely controversial in the House of Commons. It's extremely controversial between the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And so the government over the next few days will have to work hard, if it wishes to get this bill through in this Parliament, to work out if it can get some consensus and agreement with the House of Lords on some of these matters. So if I can, Chairman, I'm going to stop there and then take some questions. I'm sure there'll be some corrections for some of the things I've said from those who are more expert on these matters, but very happy to try and answer and respond as best I can to any questions that people have.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you very much for your wealth of knowledge around the issue and your time to be with us. I have what we normally call pre-forum questions that I need to ask. Now, at this point, I do say that if anyone has questions, raise your hand. We are going to take a few seconds break so Richard can get a glass of water. He's already having one, but I want him to have more because there will be more questions coming. He's a man of few words, but very thorough in what he says. So we will take a few seconds break. We will come back to Q&A, where I will have all my questions, plus the ones that you have been raising in the chat room coming through to him. So give us a second. We'll be back to you, Richard. Thank you.
Tap, tap, and send. It's okay. Go. Let me speak to my people. Now, let me speak to you. I know the stress people go through when they want to send money from abroad to their family members and loved ones in Ghana and even in Africa. See, if you are in the USA, if you are in London, UK, Canada, Europe, any part of the world, see, Tap Send has made it very easy. All you have to do is to tap and send. Within a twinkle of an eye, your money will be sent with no stress. It's very fast, convenient, and easy to access everywhere. What are you waiting for? Just tap, and send. Download Tap Send now on Google Play and App Store. Tap Send. It's secure, convenient, easy, and fast.
If I didn't have diaspora, I wouldn't have gone to bury my daughter because I couldn't afford it.
When my father passed away, without them, I don't know where I could have started with all the things I covered for the funeral.
Financially, they were ready to give me the money for the funeral here in the UK, or even in Zimbabwe. They were ready to give me US dollars.
Now we looked at other costs, but we knew that at least she was going to be repatriated.
Yes.
There was enough money to repatriate her.
We wouldn't have made it without diaspora funeral cash plan.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying through this few seconds. If we can have the Honorable Richard Fuller on our screen. Please, at this point, raise your hand with a Zoom icon or send a message via the chat. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, please do the same. Send a message, we can get it read. At the same time, I want to make you aware, we have had the support of Tap Tap Send. Tap Tap Send, your #1 money transfer to Ghana. No fee. You just tap and send. High rate, easy access in Ghana. People don't need to go to the bank to cash it out. It goes straight on their mobile phone, Momo or bank. Instant chips, it goes straight away. We also have the support of Diaspora Insurance. Listen, my brothers and sisters on the forum, I'm the chairman of Ghana Union, and I will recommend to you, we Ghanaians don't talk about funerals because we think it's an abomination, but it does happen. We're all gonna go one day. Your father, your mother, your uncle, your auntie, your sisters. You are in UK, you can afford to pay a little bit and support when the time comes and you don't have nothing on you. So look through the internet and search for Diaspora Insurance. They cover all countries, Zimbabwe, Ghana, every other country you can think of, South Africa and all that. Please, let's be prepared. No one should die and leave their responsibility for us to cover, because it happens when you're not prepared. And they have a cash plan, they have all the other plans. And I do say, I've gone to their website, I've visited other people who have used them, and I can say that they are a company of repute. Please make use of them. Let's not wait for the day where somebody has died and we have to go and borrow money to go and bury them in Ghana. Please take care of that situation before it happens. We also have Chango. Chango, all they does is they set up your ITs, all the other information you need on your systems as a company, as an individual. At the same time, they also have a Chango app where if you're on the old school and you want to raise funds, if you're a family and you want to raise funds, you can all chip in bit by bit and it will be sent to Ghana. We want to thank Ghana Union for putting this together. The Western Region Nurses Association for helping us to put it together. We want to thank the Ghana Nurses Association UK for joining us in this exercise of trying to educate people, inform, and make people aware. These are part of the psychosocial impact that we are trying to treat following the pandemic, and we want all of you to be involved. We want to thank the support of Nightingale Ghanaian Nurses Association for joining us, and all that other Ghanaian organizations watching live tonight who have been part throughout our time over the past 1.5 years. Omega Live TV is covering this live. Omega Live TV, thank you for your support, and for Ghana High Commission for endorsing us and our program. Okay, so Richard, where I come from, when you call an MP without saying honorable, they get offended. But you don't mind, do you, if I say Richard?
Not in the slightest, of course not. No. You have to earn honor, and I'm sure many on this call would say that many MPs fall short of that.
I did call some MP, and I said their name, and they were like, point of correction, I'm an honorable, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. Doesn't make a difference. But I'm sure you don't mind. So I'll call you Richard for the purpose of the Q&A. Okay, so I've got a few questions that has been sent to me prior to the event that you're on now. Number one, what are some of the instances that could lead to someone losing their citizenship? And I'll give you 3 questions, and you may have to take note and answer them so that we don't wait for the answer. What are the processes that will be taken prior to stripping someone off their British citizenship? And what happens to those without any other nationality, i.e., typical British like yourself, who have fallen flat of the law? What will happen to someone like in that category? Would they still strip their British citizenship and leave them outside the country? So 3 questions.
All right, so I'll answer with my political knowledge, which may not be entirely the most accurate knowledge. So on the issue of no other nationality, I remember when legislation came forward, I think in it might have been 2014, 15, about the time that certain British citizens were going to ISIS, support ISIS in the Middle East and Syria and other places. And the Home Secretary, who I think was Sajid Javid, proposed to deprive people of citizenship on that basis. And it was specifically the case there that it was dual national citizens. And that, and I believe it is against the Geneva Convention, or certainly something, that you can't strip someone, make someone stateless. And so at the moment, the British government will only strip someone of their nationality if they have a second nationality or passport. And I think this is, and I think her name is Miss Begum, who was the one of the ladies who came from the UK, was quite a young person to Syria. She had a Bangladeshi passport as well, or a Bangladeshi citizenship actually as well. So I think if there's no other nationality, there are restrictions on the UK and other governments from stripping someone of all state nationalities and making them stateless. About the processes prior to stripping some of their citizenship, let me just read the note that I could go through the entire clause that was in about not providing notice. But I'll just read the summary. The restriction, so what the amendment in the Lords has done to provide limitations, safeguards, says that it restricts the circumstances in which notice may be withheld and introduces a stronger test requiring the Secretary of State to, quote, reasonably consider it necessary that notice should not be given. Secondly, that it provides for judicial oversight of decisions to deprive a person of their citizenship without notice on the grounds that deprivation is conducive to public good. So there's a test that the Home Secretary has to provide. That it provides for late notice to be given to a person deprived of their citizenship if they subsequently contact the Home Office. So if someone loses their citizenship, say, well, here I am, you should have contacted me, then they have the right for that to be recognized. And that their ability to bring an appeal if their citizenship is deprived only begins, would not start running until the person has subsequently been given notice. So if someone does lose their citizenship, they still keep the right to appeal about that if they haven't been contacted when it was initially done. And then just reaffirm, Chairman, that that this bill does not make any changes to the circumstances that are pertained for people of the basis upon which they should or could lose or be stripped of their British citizenship. And so the first question about what are the instances in which people lose their citizenship, the only ones that I am aware of is where there is a serious risk to national security. That is the one that has been the one that I'm most aware of.
Okay, thank you. So, from your perspective as a member of parliament, serving thousands of constituent members, what does the word reasonable notice mean to you in terms of making sure people are aware before they are taken off the list of becoming of British citizens? What would you accept as an MP if your constituent come to you and they've been denied the right to be a British citizen because of whatever reason?
Well, first of all, it's the courts of the world. I know you're asking me sort of what my judgment of it is, so I'm not going to not answer the question. But of course,
sorry, I'm not asking you opinion of government. I'm asking you your opinion. It's only your opinion. It's not.
I understand that. But equally, you have to know that the claims would be made and judgments would be made by a judge, not by politicians. So it's important to say. But what's my feelings about that? Well, I think it's unlikely that someone would contact me in my office, of course, but it may be that someone contacts me because they are overseas, and that's probably the most likely circumstance that it would occur, and say, I was in the UK, or I used to live in the UK, and I was your constituent. I have been deprived of my citizenship, and I do not believe that those was carried out correctly. That would be the likely circumstance which someone would come to a member of parliament. On that basis, I would say that every single member of parliament has a duty to seek on behalf of the person who was their constituent to make representations to find out what happened, to work out in their own judgment, me as an individual, do I think what I'm hearing from the Home Office about the grounds, the steps they took, why they took it, how they tried to get in contact, whether I feel that was reasonable. And if I don't, then to raise that issue in the House of Commons. I mean, that we do that a lot. You'll have seen on slightly or very different issues, though, Ms. Rupa Huq, who's the MP for Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, and the pressures that she put on the UK government working on behalf of her constituent overseas. I can tell you, I currently have a constituent connection, a strong constituent connection, his parents, to one of the soldiers that's been paraded in Moscow recently. So this is a gentleman, he's a British citizen, but he's also been part of the army in Ukraine for 5 years. So as a member of parliament, I'm going to represent his interests, even though he's not in the country. But that's the basis upon which MPs, I think, would work. They would take the issue, they would look at tests of reasonableness, they would raise issues in parliament on behalf of their constituent as much as they could.
Okay, one other question, one or two, I've got a lot of questions, but I would say this for now. If you hold a different, let's say Ghana allowed dual citizenship, so does the UK. And if you're caught in a situation like that, what happens to you?
Say it again. If you've got British and Ghanaian citizenship,
yes,
in this situation.
And for any reason you have to be removed or taking your British citizenship, what happened to you?
Well, you would be then a citizen of Ghana, and so presumably you would, in those circumstances, have to return to Ghana from wherever you were in the world. I think it's important. I can see in one of the questions that someone says, "Why does the government not want to give people notice?" This is not what the legislation is about. If I can be clear, the government do want to give notice. It's just there are certain circumstances where it is impossible to contact that person. Let's take a situation. We talked earlier about ISIS. Let's take it from that individual I talked about and just talk more generally. A British citizen gets motivated to fight for a terrorist organization that's well entrenched in another country. And there's no British representative, there's no British embassy, there's no British consulate. It is not safe to go to that territory. And that person is still claiming that they're British whilst they're there fighting against the principles of this country, the principles or even potentially against the force in this country. But we can't get through that to that person. That's the circumstance which, at the moment, there is no way that the government has the right or the ability to deprive that person of citizenship, because the 1981 legislation requires that they, write a letter, stick a stamp, put it in the post, and give it to the person. And this legislation says that's too outmoded, that doesn't work. We're going to make this explicit change. So it's not that the government wants to get rid of giving people notice. It's just they've recognized there have been circumstances where it's been impossible to give notice, and therefore they have wanted to have this legislative change.
Right. So can you share light on circumstances where the Home Office has lost any case on someone challenging their nationality withdrawn? Do you have any insight into something of that sort?
I don't. I don't recall that being raised in Parliament. I wasn't on the committee, so I don't recall. But I'm not. These are such rare events that I don't think there will be a substantial body of cases. And I think particularly with the oversights that have now been added to the bill on notice, that there are safeguards around that action being taken. I know there's been some sort of media saying that suddenly there's a big change, and now people going about their daily business may suddenly find that they've lost their citizenship. And that's not the case. That's absolutely not the case, either before the legislation, now while the legislation is being debated, nor if this bill becomes an act. That will not be the case. But it does get to a sense, I mentioned this right at the start, Chairman, that we've had a number of immigration changes over the rules over the last few years. And there is a sense, I think, at some point, with when is this amount of change going to end? Because it does make people feel insecure. People who live in this country, want to live in this country, do all the right things in this country. I can understand people say, well, you keep talking about immigration. That makes me feel different because either my parents came from another country or I came from another country. And I've had the blessing in my life to be a citizen, to be an immigrant in other countries, as you said in your opening. So I value that. And I don't like an environment where people feel somehow at risk, where there is no reason to be at risk. And so I think it's just important to mention this legislation is not designed to do anything on this deprivation of citizenship other than to change the process of notification. That has oversight. And it's only on very rare cases like the one that I mentioned earlier on that it will be applied.
So if I understood you rightly, the only difference from where we were before where we are going to be is the notification process. There is no difference between, because some crimes when you commit, terrorism, threat to the country, and fraud and other things will automatically take you out of becoming or being a British citizen, because that's not the value that you actually swore when you took an oath of allegiance to become a British citizen. So the only difference is the notice and the difficulty in getting hold of the person in question. Is that what we are saying?
Yes.
Right. Okay. May I remind audience that I'm not here to speak for you. I'm not the one asking questions. I've got lots of questions, but I want audience to raise their hands rather than put it in the chat room, which I have to go through and read one by one. Why? Please raise your hands. There's 100 of you here. MP is here. He sits in the Commons. He listens to all the conversations. Very well versed to answer your questions. So please raise your hand and I'll be calling you to answer. Otherwise, I'll be going on with my own questions here that people sent to me. So we had a long petition about this problem. Do you know what that petition actually meant to the Commons? Did it make any difference to halting the whole bill, or it just carried on irrespective of what we did?
It was this petition on the deprivation of citizenship, or in general about the borders?
The deprivation of citizenship, yes. There were various petitions going around, which we did all sign.
Well, I think petitions do have an impact on Parliament. And it really depends. I mean, I've been in Parliament where there's been no party with an overall majority and a party with a small majority, and now a party with a large majority. And the balance of where interrogation and change in legislation can occur differs based on those circumstances. And when I was looking at the third immigration bill, there were particular changes I wanted to see made on detention. And I managed, because it was quite a small majority, to persuade the minister to make some modest changes and give some assurances about changes at that time. It's much harder in the House of Commons to do that. So when petitions are provided now, a lot of that effect will be in the House of Lords, and in sort of encouraging the House of Lords to stand up to the House of Commons. The House of Lords obviously is not elected, and so there are certain limitations, both in procedure, but also in the willingness of members of the House of Lords to stand up on certain points. And I think when the House of Lords know that outside Parliament, there is either a large number of people or a significant proportion of a small group, a particular segment of the society, that emboldens the members of the House of Lords and members of the House of Commons to speak up on their behalf. So you may not feel, because the changes are not made the way you wish, that doesn't have an impact. But I can tell you that those things do have an effect on how some of these changes are made. And as I say, that changes have been made on this issue of the controls over the Home Secretary on deprivation of citizenship.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the chat room, Honorable. We have one question which is close to my heart. What happens when the applicant's country refuses to accept them? So I'm from Ghana. You want to remove me because I'm a fraudster. If Ghana said, I don't want to know human rights, what would you do? Would you make me stateless?
No. So first of all, just to be clear, you're not a fraudster. There's a hypothetical situation. Again, with my experience, just sort of looking at casework as a member of Parliament, one issue is where people are still making their asylum claim, and their asylum claim hasn't been accepted in this country, or they've failed with their asylum claim. And then they're going to be removed back to their country of origin. Sometimes people have removed all of their paperwork. They don't have any paperwork, and they'll claim they may be from country A, but the UK government believes they come from country B, and then try and send them back to country B, and country B says, you've got no paperwork. How do we know this person is from our country? And so that person essentially stays in the UK. It is not feasible to put someone on a plane and drop them off in a country, and that country then just to leave them at the gate of entry, say you can't come in. So the documentation and evidence base that you have for someone whilst they're making those claims is really quite influential on one's ability to send someone, return someone to the country that you believe they are from. So in the example that you mentioned about yourself, which, you know, if it was you're of course, I don't know if you're citizenship, but if you've got a right to be in the UK, and you are then going to go overseas, or be your right to remain in the UK is being revoked, the same sort of rules would then apply. Presumably they would know that you are from Ghana because you would have had a approved stamp on your passport that was the basis of you to be here. So there'd be no question that you were from Ghana in this instance. And so if the Ghanaian authority says, we just don't want this person back, then we're in a very difficult situation. That often happens with foreign national offenders who do their term in a prison in the UK. Let's say they've committed a very serious offense like rape or child molestation or murder. They then finish their period in prison, their term of imprisonment. So they have a duty to be released from imprisonment, but then they won't be sent back to their country of origin because their country will say, we don't want this person back in our country. And often you see in detention centers people who are foreign national offenders because the government is sort of feeling they're too risky to leave in the UK, but can't deport them because the country is not accepting them. And the government then will try and find the best ways to persuade those countries to accept those people back.
Okay, thank you. There's a chat room question which I need to raise, a bit historical, but I want to raise. Margaret Thatcher once referenced to the ANE as the African National Congress as a terrorist organization. Today, Britain is happy to deal with ANC government in South Africa. Is it possible that the decision on who is defined as a terrorist gets redefined rather than entry to UK and becoming today Britain is happy to deal with ANC government in South Africa. Is it possible that the decision on who is defined as a terrorist and get banned from entry to UK or allowed back into the UK depends on whether the applicant fight or on or our side, or basically the person is saying once upon a time Britain called South Africa a terrorist country, I mean ANC, and at some point we erected a statue in the Parliament Square for the same ANC leader who was a terrorist. So how does that square with you as an MP? And I do have to say, Richard is here to share his personal opinion. He's not representing government. If it's right to say so, please.
It is. I'm not a member of the government. And on this point, it's funny how history is. So for me, when I was younger, I was at university. That was the time when the ANC was in conflict with the government, and there was in South Africa, and there was pressure to impose sanctions. And the ANC was never a terrorist organization in the UK. It was a terrorist organization in South Africa, but that had effect on the questions right about Margaret Thatcher's views on that were quite, I don't know what her views were, but they clearly weren't very warm. I was chairman of the University Conservatives, and I invited the ANC to come and speak. I think I was probably the first Conservative ever to have the ANC speak to a group of Conservative members. And I did support the ANC as its political, sort of economic political things to do much with communist organization, really. But the idea that the ANC should have the right to fight elections and win votes from all South African citizens was something that I felt was extremely important. And I sought to put pressure on the government at that time. And what the questioner is asking, I think, is a very good question, which is, history tells us that who you perceive at some time to be a terrorist organization, many years later, you find that history has changed that. And we have our own experience with the IRA and with the peace accords that occurred in the Good Friday Agreement and other subsequent agreements in Northern Ireland. And so I think the question has a very good point that decisions that are made at one time, you may reflect on later. That doesn't mean, though, in my view, that you shouldn't make those decisions at that time. You look at the situation as it is, and we learn with experience. But we should always be humble in the fact that we're making human judgments, and the fact that circumstances may change. I think Samuel, who asked the question, may want to come back on that.
Thank you, Richard. I'll give you a few seconds break. You need to take a glass of water. There's more questions. We'll go a few minutes to round up. If you don't mind, have a few seconds break. My technical team will put together a few adverts and a few times for us to refresh ourselves as we come back to more questions.
Diaspora, I wouldn't have gone to bury my daughter because I couldn't afford it.
When my father passed away, without them, I don't know where I could have started with all the things I covered for the funeral.
Financially, they were ready to give me the money for the funeral here in the UK, or even in Zimbabwe. They were ready to give me US dollars.
Now we looked at other costs, but we knew that at least she was going to be repatriated.
Yes.
There was enough money to repatriate her.
We wouldn't have made it without diaspora funeral cash plan.
Tap, and stand. It's okay. Go. Let me speak to my people. Now, let me speak to you. I know the stress people go through when they want to send money from abroad to their family members and loved ones in Ghana and even Africa. See, if you are in the USA, if you are in London, UK, Canada, Europe, any part of the world, see, Tap Send has made it very easy. All you have to do is to tap and send. Within a twinkle of an eye, your money will be sent with no stress. It's very fast, convenient, and easy to access everywhere. What are you waiting for? Just tap and send. Download Tap Send now on Google Play and App Store. Tap Send. It's secure, convenient, easy, and fast.
And so welcome back. We will have the Honorable Richard Fuller, Member of Parliament for North East Bedfordshire, with us. If I may, before we go to the next session of questions, the next program ahead of you in 2 weeks' time on the 6th of May. On the 6th of May, I'm sure in one way or the other, the 100 people who have logged on today have experienced or have heard a friend or a family member going through divorce and the acrimony that comes around it, the heartbreak, the suicide, the depression that comes around it, finding a story to exit a marriage, and the things that people say about each other that makes it so difficult. Children caught in the middle, families break up because of that. Now, the good news is that from 6th of April this year, the government of United Kingdom has reviewed some of the rules around divorce. Now, I believe, from what I understand, you don't need to create all the stories that are not necessary. And so we have lawyer Bernard Owusu, our senior partner from BWF Solicitors, to come and tell us the new changes to divorce law in the UK, all that you need to know. Please, it's a very important. In 10 years, I've gone around the community, I've seen people going through it. Some have died, some have become permanently, they've lost their mind. So share with people. We are not asking you to go and divorce, please. We are asking you to come and listen to what it is to do if at some point you feel like it's not working. And on the 6th of Friday, the 6th of May, 2 weeks from today, same place on Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook, we will be treating this topic. I invite you all. Thank you very much. This is out of the question, Richard. If I was a legislator, I would be asking for probation in marriage rather than divorce. What do you think? I would
What do you mean by probation in marriage?
So rather than going to 2 years and going to 5 years or some lengthy process of divorce, why can't you have a probation?
Why are you asking me these questions, Chairman? It's hard enough for me to talk about all
anyway,
of them. Get into the issues
let's leave that.
No fault. I would suggest that the best way is to have a happy marriage where you listen to each other. You never have to worry about all those particular options, Chairman.
If I was in the Commons, I think I would devote the next 5 years asking for probation. So you marry me, you pass probation for 3 years, then you can get your certificate as a married Mrs. or Mr. But anyway, that's for another forum. Thank you very much for your rather diplomatic response. Thank you. Right, I've got some few questions here. I'm going to go to chat room. There's a question that's it came to my eyes. Okay, someone sent me a question. There are some hands up. Let me go through the hands, those whose hands are up before I come to the question, so that I can get time to read it. I've seen hands up from Samuel Ejekum, please. Samuel Ejekum. If you are still with us, Mr. Ejekum, please unmute yourself and ask your question. And then we'll come to Rudolph Lai, and then Richard can deal with that before we go to any chat room questions. Thank you. Is Mr. Jakum here with us, please? Mr. Samuel Ejekum, are you with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, just a reiteration of the question I asked earlier on. I don't think it was answered. Maybe my question didn't get through with your kind attempt to convey. And to the Right Honourable Richard, this is not a personal view, but more perhaps tendering towards the government's, policy in regards to whether we would regard an individual as likely to be banned on our view as to whether they went out to fight on our behalf or they went out to fight against against ourselves.
Yes.
And that decision, as to whether we ban the individual, they withdraw their citizenship, is it not pure and arbitrary gesture? Is it not just an arbitrary decision that actually is not a gesture that impacts on a life and families? So you have the one instance, for example, Richard, where your good self is kindly supporting this British citizen who's fighting, who has been fighting over the last few years in Ukraine, who may well have used a gun and killed. And then you have the instance of Begin, who went to Israel, maybe personally wasn't involved in killing another human being, being banned, but the individual who's seen as fighting on our behalf, though may have been involved in killing other human beings, could be allowed back into the country. Is this not an arbitrary decision process as to who gets banned and who doesn't get banned?
Thank you, Mr. Jakum. Thank you. So the difference is that somebody going to Syria, which we all know, can be banned for joining that group. But a British soldier man who has not been permitted to go to Ukraine can still fight and come back to UK. How do you differentiate those two?
Well, let me be absolutely clear right at the front. I'm not going to make any comments that refer to my constituent specifically at all.
Yes.
So I just want to be absolutely clear about that. But I would say to Samuel, my understanding, and I understand that Samuel's point about arbitrariness, and arbitrariness is essentially that a judgment has to be made on each individual case, and therefore one could say that it may appear to be arbitrary subsequently if you get a pattern in a certain way. But the fundamental point of principle that Samuel raises, which is, should we differentiate between, is it right to differentiate between a perception of someone who fought on a side that we approved of versus someone who fought on the side of someone we don't approve of? My instinct is that I think both would be assessed. There would not be one automatic sort of allow one side, that's fine, because both actions are fighting in another country for another country. And I think both would therefore be subject to interrogation, and there would not be any automatic sort of pathway straight in for person A, pathway automatic block for person B. So I think it's a good caution that Samuel raised, and I don't have certainly don't have the authoritative answer, but my feeling is it's not as clear cut as perhaps Samuel was worrying about, but there may be patterns that do allude to the point that he has been making.
Thank you, Richard. If someone is a citizen by birth and happen to be from parents of any other origin, but has never held a passport of that country and is now caught up in that situation, what happens to that person? Because the lady in ISIS country, we have traced it to be Bangladesh. I'm not quite sure, forgive me, but I don't know whether she held a Bangladesh passport or not. But if I found somebody from Ghana, my mom and dad are from Ghana, but I have never traveled, I've never held a passport, and I am now in a position where they are sending me back. What happens to me?
Yeah. Well, I do have another passport. I have an Australian passport. So I'm covered by this legislation potentially as well. I should perhaps meant that clear at the start when I was making some comments about it. So I think that the ability to do this would apply in the case that you have mentioned, because that person would have the right to another citizenship, just as it would apply to me because I have dual nationality. But I come back to the point, which is there have been no changes in this legislation for how this will apply to whom the cases in which, the basis upon which it might be sought. The only change is a matter of notification about it. So if people feel, I can't say how people should feel, but there's nothing in the legislation that suggests that they're going to apply this any more broadly than they have for the last, well, 1981 was 1930, 40 odd years back. There's no change in that application. It's the same application. I'm in the same circumstance today as I would be when the legislation is changed. And it's only, as I say, for notification. And that's really, as we've been discussing, in those cases where it is not possible because someone is in a situation where it's very, very patently and obviously impossible or very, very tricky or dangerous to get a notification for them. And even when that happens, that will still be subject to the courts of the UK giving some oversight.
Thank you. I will ask for a question on someone whose hands is up. Rudolph Lai, please. Then I'll come back to chat room and my own other questions. Rudolph, you are still with us, please. Unmute yourself.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Right. Oh, thank you for hosting this forum. It's quite worthwhile. My question to Richard or Honorable Fulham is, when somebody returns from abroad and is denied access at the airport because his citizenship has been revoked, what are his or her rights? It has been said that most cases people are deported and asked to appeal from their country of origin or where they came from, when the person has been in the UK for more than 30, 40 years. Can Richard share some light on this, and what are the practicalities of somebody going back to their original country to appeal against the decision made about his revocation of his citizenship?
Thank you, Rudolph. Thank you. Richard, please go ahead.
Yeah, and that's a very good question, Rudolph, and I don't think I'm going to do it justice, because I think you're also, correct me if I'm wrong, the intention is also where people, not just their citizenship, but it's their right to remain in the UK has been revoked. So it's not just a citizenship, it could apply, someone has gone overseas and they come back, they've got, indefinite leave to remain, or they've got a period leave to remain, and they're blocked from coming in, and then they have to go back and then go and apply again. Is that right, Rudolph? It's the broader context. Yeah. Look, I think that is what the law is at the moment. You would be, if you're barred from entry into the UK, you would then have to go back. That's the law as it is now. It would be a law as it will be in the future. And I do think that as we have been tightening up the legislation about that, a number of people have been caught out, not so much on citizenship, but on this right to remain in the UK. And I think it has been troubling, not only for the individual concerned, but it's also for the people who knew that individual. When someone has built up links in this country, it isn't just them and their family, it's all the people in the community that know them, it's where they work, it may be where they study, and suddenly that person is not here. And so everyone sort of says, well, why is that? And people don't understand all the details, they don't know what the circumstances may be. It might have been a bureaucratic glitch, it might have been something important, maybe something not important at all. But the worry in the community, the anxiety in the community spreads out quite widely. And I think the British government needs to be very, very careful about that. The Windrush issues, where people were asked to go and find documentation from the 1960s and the 1970s, has rightly been seen as a scandal. But when that law change was made, nobody, all the smart legislators, I don't think, maybe there were some who said, but it was not a big concern that was raised up as a red flag that was debated in detail in Parliament. And it was horrendously difficult for families that were caught like that, caused tremendous anxiety and worry. And I do think that we have to keep alert as parliamentarians about it. But the core answer to your question is, if someone is caught like that, then they will, this legislation does not change any of those circumstances. And I think we just have to be we have to be as concerned about the impact on how the community is feeling about their anxiety as we have to be about the particular individual case.
Thank you, Richard. In your view, in your view, what is your view, personal view? And I want to make it clear, it's a personal view for now, until we get to the broader issues where we know where we stand. UK sending immigrants to Uganda. What's your view on that?
Rwanda, you mean?
Sorry, you want Rwanda, sorry. Are we shipping our responsibilities and our bad eggs to another poor country that is barely trying to survive? What's the moral aspect of this bill or policy?
So I would say that the morality.
I'm looking at morality and legally. I mean, what do you think? An African country who was 2008 was described as a genocide, and is now taking asylum seekers from United Kingdom that has been well established for centuries. How does that square with you?
Well, for me, the moral question, the moral hazard comes when the state decides to detain someone, because when a state deprives someone of their liberty and locks them up each day, is responsible for their food, either provides or limits access to them, to people who could console them or could legally advise them or whatever, that's the moral hazard that a state has. As I mentioned earlier on, in my constituency, we have a detention center that used to detain children when this is before Mr. Cameron became, this is before 2010, but Yarlswood Detention Center was for families. We locked up children for immigration purposes. That was wrong. That's just, that is a huge moral hazard. Doesn't matter whether it's in this country or in Rwanda or in America or in France, it's just wrong. And so as a member of parliament, I've had a particular focus on detention centers. And I worry about a reliance on a detention. Now, this is changing because it's not so much about detention when you're trying to remove someone once their appeal has failed. This is about essentially detaining someone or housing someone whilst their appeal is processed. And so it's different in the space, whether it's in the UK or in Rwanda. So for me, before even this bill was published, I was talking to the then Minister for Immigration, and I wanted to make sure that if we were going to have a process where people were put in reception centers, either here or anywhere else, that they had access, much more improved access to legal representation, support representation, people who could psychologists and others who can understand trauma that people have been through. And he assured me that'd be the case, and I want to make sure that is the case as this legislation comes into place. When it comes to the particular issue of going to Rwanda, that's, to me, stretches the moral hazard. You mentioned issues to do with country. I think that's, if I may say, that's peripheral to the ability of the UK to ensure, the important point, which is the ability of the UK to provide a safe environment for people whilst they are effectively assessed for their asylum claims. Why is the UK government doing this? Is really trying to, it is a proposal, an attempt to try and break the incentive structures for people to come to the UK illegally. And I think I saw a question in the chat earlier on, which is if you increase the risks about people coming here, if you make it a harsher process, doesn't that mean that the price goes up for the criminal gangs? I would argue that if you make it less likely that someone, if they take this course, is going to get what they are paying for, then actually you'll find that people will say, I'm not going to pay as much because you're less likely to make that happen. So by putting these things in place, it's an attempt to try and break the criminal gangs. I can tell you this, without effective action on criminal justice with our European and other counterparts, this part of legislation will not achieve, I think, the objectives, certainly the full extent of the objectives that it is put in place. But I don't share the point either that the Archbishop has that it's ungodly, or your own view that somehow there should be some moral question around the fact that it is in a particular third country. I think the issue is about, can we hold the UK government to account with the same force for the way in which people are protected if they are in those centres, whether they are in Bedfordshire or in their third country?
All right. Okay. So What I have here that people sent to me, in your view, how long do you believe someone, or how long do you deem it fair for somebody to be kept under review by Home Office in terms of seeking leave to remain, either through asylum or whatever means? I'm sure you would have had these cases on your desk every day.
Yeah.
How long do you personally believe the Home Office should take? Because we have instances in the community where people have been waiting for 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrendous. How on earth can we have a process that leaves people in limbo for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? As a member of Parliament for Bedford, from 2010 to 2017, I had many cases, immigration cases, and people had already been in the process for 5, 7 years. You know, their circumstances changed. They still didn't have any certainty about what their resolution of their case would be. Some were still here in this country, and they had received a report saying you have no right to be here, but they were still here. And so what's someone doing with their life there? They now know that they don't have a right to be here, but they're still trying to claim a right here. The process was making a mess of both those and many other examples of those life patterns. And so when people say what is the right time to assess something, it is not just how quickly can you do the paperwork, how quickly can you provide a fair and thorough evaluation about it. It is also how effective are you at the end of that you've made the decision, then someone becomes a citizen and they feel secure in the country, UK, or that they are sent back to the country they came from because they had no right to do it. And this legislation is just trying a different approach. We don't know how effective it's likely to be. What's my answer to your question about how long do I think a process should take? I would say that the idea that someone right at the point of entry should be able at that moment to provide all the evidence that they have about their particular claim, I think that's unlikely to be right. So you can't make an instantaneous judgment. You then therefore have to take people to a center or put them in the country somewhere to make that assessment. I would say that some period of 6 months, people should be able, even those who have had particularly traumatic circumstances, if they have the right support, to be able to build their case and to make their case to the UK government in that way. So I would say that to me would be the period of time, but not 6 years, not 10 years, not thinking of additional pieces of information to drop in just because they are useful. I think there are problems with the legislation and we'll have to work through about certain particular circumstances. If someone's been trafficked, if someone's been under the auspices of criminal gangs and how they have been treated, or things that they may have done in their past because they're under the power of an influence of criminal gangs. So it'll need some check and validation, but that would be my straight answer to your question.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, I can see a comment by Peter Hogan in the chat chair, where he mentions, if I may say, Peter, that you would need many more caseworkers than there are at the moment and of a higher caliber. Amen. That's precisely what is needed. If you're going to have this tougher system, I'll call it a tougher system, it is a tougher system. The quid pro quo for a country that wants to be a beacon of justice, which we should be around the world, is that we're giving the people who come here, even if it's by an irregular route, a route we don't approve of, the access to the best advice, the best counselors, the best psychologists, the best understanding, the most sympathetic ear. Give them that chance while you make the assessment. Because if you don't, you're just harsh and unreasonable. And I don't think this country is harsh and unreasonable. I want it to be tough, but I also want it to be sensitive, even if people don't follow the rules the way they come.
Somebody sent me a question. I'm struggling to say it to you because you're not here appointed by the government to answer questions on their behalf, but doing the community a gesture of goodwill, and I do appreciate that. How do you square the momentum of support UK has given to Ukraine, to the likes of Libya, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and all the other war-torn African countries, and the opportunity to resettle with family and people offering their houses? How do you square with that? From your personal perspective, please. I understand We are not here. I never invited you to represent Boris Johnson, so you're not speaking for. I want my audience to be aware of that. But from your personal perspective, if you don't want to share your opinion, please say you don't.
No, look, I'm happy to. I mean, it may not be useful for people because I'm not, the Home Secretary or Immigration Minister or in charge of the refugee program. Look, through my life, I have learned that everyone in the world is my brother or my sister, wherever they are, whatever their circumstances. And I have a responsibility to treat them like my brother or my sister, wherever they come from, whatever their faith, whatever their abilities or lack of abilities, whatever their gender, whatever their sexual, whatever it is. And I think British politics needs to treat people that way. And when I go to schools in my constituency, I always tell people one of the most important things you do is whenever you meet someone, meet them with an open heart. Be prepared to listen. God gave us 2 ears. I know it's so it's said often, but we don't listen. 2 ears to listen, only 1 mouth to speak. I don't know what's speaking, but I think that's an important part of my life experience. But that's me. And each of my constituents will have had their own life experiences and think they feel comfortable with. It is interesting that both when we had the issue with Afghanistan, we had to put a refugee program together. When we had Syria, we had to put a refugee program together. Now with Ukraine, we have to have a refugee program together. I think the UK needs to have a standard refugee program with the government so that we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel each time. And that we should open that up to the British public, who I would hope would respond with that openness to everyone, regardless of where they have come from. So one of the things that, as a member of Parliament, I will be pressing Richard Harrington, who's the minister now in charge of refugees, is to say, as part of your job, don't just sort out and streamline the Ukraine Homes for Refugees program for that, but make it the standard that we then apply to all countries in the future. The largesse and the charity of the British public may differ depending on the news and what they feel, but the UK government should be absolutely blind as to the country of origin when we decide that those people need our help. And that is a personal view.
Thank you. Richard, I will give you 1 minute to take a second break, and I will come back to you. We just need you to have more time. I know 2 hours is long enough for somebody who has sat through the Commons chamber for her whole week. And I appreciate your time. Audience, we have Richard Fuller here. Please raise your hand. If you don't, then that means you don't want to ask a question. We have 100 or so people in and out, and it's an interesting topic. So please feel free. We will take a few commercials and then we'll come back. Commercials are important because they are the one that carry the program live to you while you are sitting in your sitting room and enjoying the conversation without having to travel anywhere. We need them to support us so that we can bring this to you. So bear with us as we do so. It's not long. Thank you very much.
If I didn't have diaspora, I wouldn't have gone to bury my daughter because I couldn't afford it.
When my father passed away, without them, I don't know where I could have started with all the things I covered for the funeral.
Financially, they were ready to give me the money for the funeral here in the UK, or even in Zimbabwe. They were ready to give me US dollars.
Now we looked at other costs, but we knew that at least she was going to be repatriated.
Yes.
There was enough money to repatriate her.
We wouldn't have made it without diaspora funeral cash plan.
tap, tap, and send. It's okay. Go. Let me speak to my people. Now, let me speak to you. I know the stress people go through when they want to send money from abroad to their family members and loved ones in Ghana and even Africa. See, if you are in the USA, if you are in London, UK, Canada, Europe, any part of the world, see, tap send has made it very easy. All you have to do is to tap and send. Within a twinkle of an eye, your money will be sent with no stress. It's very fast, convenient, and easy to access everywhere. What are you waiting for? Just tap, and send. Download Tap Send now on Google Play and App Store. Tap Send. It's secure, convenient, easy, and fast.
Welcome back. Welcome back, audience. Thank you very much for staying through with us. Tonight, we have the Honorable Richard Fuller, MP for Northeast Bedfordshire, with us, going through the new bill that seeks to take away your citizenship without notice. He's done a lot of justice to a lot of questions that we've been asking. May I just thank the organizers for this program, Ghana Union, the Ghana Nurses Association UK, the Western Region Association of UK, the Ghanaian Nightingale Nurses Association UK. I also want to thank the Omega Live TV for carrying this live on Facebook and all the other platforms. We also want to thank our sponsors, Tap Send. Without you, we couldn't have done this. We've been doing this for a while now, and you've helped us to continue. Diaspora Insurance, your number one insurance company that you need to approach. We are from Ghana, we are from Africa. Funerals are burdensome when the news happen. Talk to them. If you are a group, one of the things I read about them is that if you're a group, they can actually insure your group. So that instead of you paying the benefit to your members by donating 30, 20 pounds, you can actually insure your group up to those who are under 75 years of age. So that when something happens to them, you don't have to pay. They will cough up and support you. So all the organizations and the Ghana Union and those who are affiliated and those who are partners, please take a look at Diaspora Insurance. Go and read about them on the website, and you hear a lot about it. Chango, we want to talk about IT Consortium for their support. All the groups who want to raise funds in Ghana or around the world or supporting Ukraine or any other issues around the world, please feel free to do so. Honorable, thank you for being with us. This is Ghanaian Community Awareness Forum. It's a one-stop forum that cuts across all the Ghanaian community from Bedford to Northeast Bedford, Bedfordshire, to London, to Kent, everywhere. Everybody's watching. You'll be amazed how many people are logging on from other parts of the country. Now, a few questions I have for you before I go to the chat room, and then we will round up for your final remarks. This bill says we will remove you if you commit a crime that is against the national will of the country. What have we put in place in countries around the world for appeal process to be sped up? So I arrive at Heathrow, all of a sudden I get told I cannot enter, I get sent back to Ghana. What support mechanism has been put in Ghana for me to be able to fight the battle to return to where I belong and I've been here for years? Have we done anything like that?
Well, just to be clear, this bill doesn't do removal. That's not what this bill is doing. The legislation that is existing.
I returned to Ghana. I traveled to Ghana as British citizenship or whatever. And then on my way, I get told I've done something wrong and you can't enter Heathrow. And you're sent back. What happens to me? How do I go about the appeal?
That's not this legislation, right? So the circumstances that you've talked about, come back to the point about deprivation of citizenship in the bill this bill, the change that's being made is solely about notification, right. And it is oversight in very limited circumstances. So that is not changing. The issues that you're talking about are more, I think, Chair, about what the existing body of legislation is and some of the problems that perhaps this bill is not addressing. which is if there is a circumstance where people find it more likely that their leave to remain in this country is challenged, and when they come back to this country, they can't re-access this country. So what would happen to that person? Well, I would say that in those circumstances where you are not able to make your claim, and that's everywhere in the world, you have to go back to your country of origin, and then you will have to make the claim from there, and you will be on your own resources to make that claim, because it is your claim about your right to be in this country. There's no requirement on any state to say to someone, we have found that you have no right to be in the country that you thought you did, but here's some resources for you to make that claim. I don't understand that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't understand that scenario, how it would work. I think the fact that that's happening perhaps more often, as we talked about a bit earlier on, if it is the case that happens more often, that can create anxiety for people here who say, will this happen to me? And there's no reason to believe that it would happen to someone in the future just because of some of the legislative changes that are being made at the moment.
Okay, thank you, sir. There's a chat room question that says, I believe that the Rwandan solution has appeared because French will not accept the return of those leaving France for the UK. What do you say about that? Is that possibility why we are now sending them to Africa somewhere?
So the people who cross the channel most usually come from France to the UK. So as the government makes, the ministers made abundantly clear all the way through, if you're in France and you're seeking asylum to be away from danger, you're in France. France is not a country at war. France is a country that has the established rules of law. You can make your asylum claim in France. So what is it that compels you not to be in France to come to the UK? It seems to make sense that you should stay in France and make your claim there. Do the UK and the French government work together on trying to stop crossings? That's been the case for many, many years, and it works quite successfully on lorry crossings. And we saw a significant reduction, and some of us will remember the very tragic circumstances of some lorries where people were, there was no oxygen in the lorry and being found. And I think one of my Conservative MPs, the MP for Thurrock, I think it was, how devastated she was when she was told by the police that had happened before many of us knew. And so it has worked successfully in that area. But on the issue of boats, that's obviously, if it's a lorry, you're largely coming through the Channel Tunnel. With the coastline, it's a very large coastline. And we have to accept that it's very hard for France and hard for the UK to manage such a long coastline. Once they cross the channel, there are also certain other international protocols, the International Law of the Sea, that might interfere with them. And you might get in a situation, if you can't stop people leaving the coast because it's so long, that people get into the water, they're halfway through crossing the channel. What do you do? Now, some would say push them back to France, and France would push them back to the UK. That doesn't seem to me to be a happy solution for anyone, a very dangerous situation for the people who may be in those boats. So I think the UK should continue to talk to the French about how we can manage this, and for France to perhaps do a better job of processing people who are on the coastline and thinking of making it to the UK. But in the absence of that being effective, I think the UK has to test new options that might reduce the power of these criminal gangs to prey on people to make that crossing by taking away the guarantee that if you get here, you'll be treated as an asylum claim. You're not. You're treated, you will have broken the law, and we'll spend 6 months trying to send you back to your country of origin. Second of all, that you'll then have to go through a very speeded up process of approval. So you have to make the case there. There's no longer the opportunity for you to string this out over 6 years, 12 years, as we've been talking earlier on. And then thirdly, and most controversially, that you might at the end of that process get the right to remain not in the UK, but into another safe third country. We talked about Rwanda. For someone then thinking about, should I get on this boat? Should I pay this money? Where in the past, I knew if I get to the other side, my asylum claim is going to be understood or be reviewed, and I'll have the chance of stringing it out. And I know at the end of that, I'll be in the UK. And now all those three things have gone. I think that is a significant deterrent. We'll have to see if it's an effective deterrent.
Okay. So if I may, it is a deterrent to send people to Uganda. Is it Uganda or Rwanda? Rwanda. Forgive me. I get confused with the two. So it is a deterrent to send them there. And the UK government has taken the position that if we send them there, we'll stop others from coming. What about if it doesn't?
Yeah.
Because what I understand from Sky News is that you're only sending males, men to Rwanda. What happens to them if they are married with children and you're sending the father to Rwanda?
Well, we'll have to see. The government haven't been entirely clear about what they're going to, who they're going to do, or how many, or what proportion it is. So I don't want to sort of speculate about that, but I think most politicians would not want to see children taken through that process. So I don't think it's the government's intention to do that. But your point is, what if it doesn't? If it doesn't work? Well, if it doesn't work, we'll have to look at something else to do. And I've already mentioned earlier on that I think as a standalone policy, without efforts on criminal justice cooperation to try and break some of these criminal human trafficking gangs, we are weakening its chance of success. So I hope the Home Secretary does more on that.
Okay.
But you can't. But I just say the current system clearly isn't working. One might say the scale of the problem isn't as big as perhaps the Home Secretary is saying. People might say that it's the wrong approach. People might say it's not right to do processing in another country. All those are legitimate questions. But what is a requirement for those who would pose someone who's making a proposal for change that they believe may be effective is, if you don't agree with that, what would you do? Because the current situation isn't working effectively enough.
Thank you. Thank you. I did listen to the Home Secretary on Wednesday, I believe, when she made a statement. Correct me if I'm wrong. And her view was that, I mean, it costs a lot of money to keep refugees here. Do you have any idea how much it costs to keep people here rather than in Rwanda?
I don't know how much it would cost in Rwanda. I don't think the costings of that are fully understood yet. But we spend billions of pounds on the whole processes of the Home Office, including the assessments, including the personnel who manage the casework, and including the support that's given to people with public support in terms of housing, money to live, and in certain circumstances, education for children, whilst people go through their asylum claim. And those costs go on in the current system, can go on for many years. So I don't know what the cost comparison will be. I would hope that costs would be reduced, but the most important thing is it's effective in stopping the very dangerous traffic of people getting onto boats where they might drown, or going into very dangerous circumstances to cross from a country, France, where it's a country where they can already make an asylum claim and is safe.
Okay. My final question, please. It seems that the bill from the chat room, it seems that the bill is in place to address acts of criminality or terrorism. Why not amend or tighten the Terrorism Act instead of the bill that you want to strip people of? Before somebody become a terrorist, why don't we find a way to stop them rather than get them to it and then say you can't come back because you're a terrorist or you are whatever the crime might be?
Well, the UK has a tremendously powerful and effective anti-terrorism security structure in this country. We have been subject to terrorist attack from time to time, but mercifully few. And that is because we do put in lots of safeguards to ensure, first of all, that we don't import people who may be potential terrorists into this country, and that we don't allow people in this country to be groomed or be enticed into acts of terrorism. So we do all of those things, but no system can ever be 100% proof against that. And people at some points will make that individual decision that they want to go country A or country X. And what this bill is doing is simply just saying that in those circumstances, if a judgment is made, we're not able to provide people with notice, then there are certain circumstances where the Home Secretary can deprive someone's citizenship without notice. But that has nothing to do with me going about my daily business as a dual citizen. I don't know other people on the call who are dual citizens. It's nothing to do with us at all, at all.
Thank you, Richard. It's been a pleasure hosting you, and I want to thank you on a Friday evening to spend 2 hours with the Ghanaian community. We are grateful. Please, your final words, please. Anything you want to round up with, please. Thank you.
Very briefly, what I would say is that modern politics and decision-making on issues like this really do test the balance of one's morality, ethics, as you seek to find solutions to difficult problems that have been standing for quite a while. And none of us are perfect. I certainly know I'm not perfect. And I think all MPs would not. I think the legislation, having been very critical of legislation in the past, I think the Home Secretary, her efforts on this is worth support. I worry and want to make sure that the support is there to make sure that we live up to our quality standards as a beacon of liberty around the world. And more importantly, I want us to stop talking about immigration so much, because I think talking about immigration all the time just creates anxieties that shouldn't be there for people of this country, who are citizens of this country, who have permanent leave to remain and are contributing to this country. It's time to solve all the concerns that people have and to move on and recognize the contribution of people in this country and to stop making people feel anxious about it.
Thank you, Richard. On behalf of the Ghanaian community, I want to thank you for your time, the expertise you brought to this forum, and the knowledge that you've provided this evening. Permit me to say I'm grateful for all your support over the many years. Every time we've called on you, either through dinner dance or through any appearance, you've made time for us. I count on the Ghanaian community, wherever they are, to give you their support. I mean, you're not soliciting for it, but I mean, I'm sure we can all do a little bit to support you whenever you need us to do so. Audience, thank you for joining us. We want to thank you for everything that this evening has brought to us. I hope you've taken so many knowledge about this program. Thank you, and have a very restful weekend, and Godspeed on all your endeavors over the weekend. Stay safe and be blessed. Good night.